welcome the CEO of Kayak, Steve Hafner, in conversation with Skift founding editor and executive editor, Dennis Schaal.
Steve, thanks for coming out to play today.
It's my pleasure, Dennis. Great to see you, albeit virtually.
Absolutely. So, Steve, Metasearch in general and Kayak in particular, coming out of the pandemic, on the rise or on the decline?
I'd say neither. I think Metasearch is just going to be just as relevant as it was before the pandemic once we emerge from this. People always will have a need to see a complete picture of their travel options. They'll want to compare prices between OTA and supplier direct. And they'll also have the additional complexity now wanting to know what the cancellation policies are and COVID-19 cleaning policies are. So I think Meta will play just as important a role as it ever has. The nuance is I think the OTAs will recover more than Meta will, just because they're under less financial pressure than the Metas. Our advertising business is shrunk up quite a bit. And then the OTAs and our other business partners have raised their required return on investment for the marketing spends. So the Meta channel is going to be face a little more headwind in terms of getting back into performance channels. But once we get back there, I think we'll take more than our fair share from OTAs.
So on that note, there were some adverse trends for Metasearch even before the pandemic in terms of the big OTAs like Booking and Expedia trimming some of their marketing spend in favor of brand advertising in some of the platforms. We see all this direct booking going on. And we just heard Wouter talk about how direct booking has really increased by hotels during the pandemic. So how do you meet those challenges?
Well, look, a consumer still has a comparison shop somewhere, right? And the best place to do that is on a Metasearch site. So yeah, I totally agree that there have been headwinds on the monetization of that traffic as OTAs have raised their required return on investments. But that doesn't mean usage of Metasearch has gone down. In fact, it actually pre-pandemic was quite nicely, particularly when you add Google's query volume, which they don't disclose, onto the normal Metasearch leaders like Kayak.
So I see that Vrbo is, a fairly heavy advertiser in Kayak. At least, there's a fairly big presence, and they've, Peter Kern, the CEO of Expedia, has talked about how Vrbo has really gotten a lot of, direct bookings during the pandemic, and Airbnb is bragging about all the repeat visitors it gets. So about the direct booking, how does that play in terms of Kayak?
Well, I think the non-traditional hotel accommodations, which is what VRBO and Airbnb do so well, is on Kayak. That same property is available for multiple players, including our sister brands, Booking.com and Priceline and Agoda. So we'll always play in that. There is a big segment of consumers who believe that properties on Airbnb are exclusively on Airbnb, and that Airbnb has the best prices on that. That's actually not true, and Metasearch shows you that it's not true. So hopefully some other OTAs can amplify that message from marketing activities, and perhaps Kayak and some other Metasearch sites might get into that angle as well to educate the consumer that it pays to shop around.
So how could you do that regarding Airbnb? How could you expose the fact that it's not exclusive inventory? What do you have in mind?
Well, we don't have the marketing budgets that some of our sister brands do. So I suspect it won't be Kayak leading the charge on that. It might be Booking.com or someone else within the Booking Holdings umbrella. And I can't speak for Expedia Group, but you are talking to Peter Kern later today. You might ask him how he's going to educate people that there are unique properties on VRBO that aren't on Airbnb, and that some of the properties on Airbnb are on VRBO and at presumably a lower price.
Were you joking that you don't have a marketing budget?
I wasn't joking. I think like everybody else in the industry, nobody has the marketing budgets they'd like to have, because I think we need this. Look, we've all been dealt big blows on the P&Ls and considerable losses, but we all want to advertise ahead of consumer demand because we know that demand's going to come back. And usually the company that advertises the earliest, is the most aggressive, reaps more than their fair share of return. The question everyone's wrestling with is, when's the right moment to advertise? Because you don't want to advertise right before things get shut down, and we've had multiple shutdowns now. So people are very, very gun shy, and we are too.
So speaking of Airbnb, 127 billion market cap, booking holdings 88 billion. Airbnb overvalued?
You know, I'm not smart enough to opine on market valuations. It certainly seems that they're being held to a different standard than some of the established companies out there. You know, in a normal year, Booking Holdings will make over $5 billion in profit. Airbnb, I think, at its high water mark was a couple $100 million in profit. So clearly, for them to be valued a lot higher than us, 50% more than us, you know, makes you scratch your head. But you know, that said, we'll see how the long-term dynamics work out. You know, my job as a CEO of Kayak is to make sure that Kayak performs well, and we'll let Brian Chesky and the management team at Airbnb justify their valuation with their own execution.
If you didn't work for Booking Holdings, whose assets would you rather have going forward, Airbnb's or Booking?
You know, I'd like to have both, but I don't think the regulators will let us get away with that. You know, look, Booking Holdings does many things very, very well. Finding and sourcing the best prices, calling on hotels, sourcing reviews and pictures, providing great customer service, spending heavily on performance marketing channels, and you know, turning that into a great e-commerce engine. Airbnb does some phenomenal things as well. They brought a lot of content that historically hasn't been online, but they've got a fanatical audience of users. They've built a community. They have a very great direct business. You know, if I could start another company and merge both of those two skill sets together, wouldn't that be a phenomenal thing? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. You know, whether Booking Holdings can build that direct audience and that loyalty and that sense of community and that additional Airbnb content, and whether Airbnb can get its performance marketing and brand marketing engine into place.
Yeah, I think the regulators would have something to say about that, like Airbnb and Booking combined. But what about Kayak's short-term rental business? How's that going? And do you see that as the largest opportunity for Kayak, or what do you see as Kayak's largest opportunity?
Look, our core business is still flights and traditional accommodation. So yeah, we have a great product for vacation rentals and non-traditional accommodations, and we're continually adding to that feature set and that content. But you know, the vast majority of people know us for flights, and then a smaller segment knows us for hotels. And I think that's where the near-term opportunity is, and that's what we're focused on. We do have some other long-term bets. So we have Kayak for Business, which we talked about right before this pandemic happened. We're tinkering around in the hotel software space, and you know, we are nibbling a little bit on loyalty. So we'll see how all those trends play out in the next 12 months or so.
My colleague over at the company Dime, or fellow reporter, Jay Campbell, wrote about Kayak's entry into you know, Kayak for Business, and he said Kayak, Expensify, and Embark are the latest examples of the historically futile quest of online-first travel intermediaries to attract and keep loads of small to medium-sized businesses. You know, he talked about, you know, you know, it's an unmanaged business mostly, you know, for small businesses. They, you know, the road warriors just tend to book on consumer sites. So what gives you optimism that you can make something out of Kayak for Business?
You know, I read Campbell's article. It was a great article, and his insights aren't too dissimilar from what we believe here at Kayak. So we know it's a problem that hasn't been fixed yet, even though many have tried and died tackling it. So what we think we bring is we know unmanaged travelers are already using Kayak for their leisure stuff and even for their business trips. But there's a couple of features that Kayak lacks that they'd love to have. One is the ability to expense your business trip. Another is the ability to have corporate rates. And the last is the ability to book direct and actually track it and pay for it with one single credit card. So we've been actually building those very simple features so that we can offer a product to the unmanaged business set. You know, I think what our advantage is we have great user interfaces. You know, people know how to use Kayak. We add these couple of simple elements. We charge no subscription fees. We provide no customer service. There's no transaction fees, and I think we're pretty bullish. So you know, once business travel comes back, which, you know, everyone's best guess is a couple of years away, I think we're going to be very well positioned. And as a, you know, as an example of that, just this month we're going to roll out Kayak for Business in 60 more markets and 28 more languages. So we're in active development. We're ready for the pandemic to end and business travel to return.
Excellent. So we've seen Google's impact on Metasearch. I remember writing a blog post, probably like in 2007 or something, where you said, your biggest fear for Kayak was Google getting into the hotel business, which certainly happened. But, we've seen, TripAdvisor is trying to pivot away from Metasearch. I mean, they're still active, but they're doing tours and activities and restaurants and that kind of thing. And Trivago bought weekend.com. It's now the merchant of record doing packages. It's trying to do more travel inspiration. So does Kayak have to pivot in some kind of manner to thwart Google, or what do you guys have to do?
No, not at all. Look, Metasearch was a problem that needed to be solved for consumers, which is price comparison, and then the ability to book supplier direct versus OTA direct. That problem has been largely solved by numerous players now. So I think everyone's just saying, we have these great engineering teams, we have big consumer audiences. What else can we do for those, for that team or for that audience? And that's why we're making bets along the spectrum. So, I think that's how innovation works in the category. I think Kayak's very good at it. Some other companies are very good at it too. And the end result will be much better consumer applications for travel.
We just did an audience poll. Does Metasearch emerge more or less relevant from the crisis? Close to 69% said it's going to be more important for consumers, and 31% said online travel agencies will prevail. So there's that. And online travel agencies own a bunch of Metasearch companies too. So
I think you have a great audience, Dennis.
There must have been, what do you call it, loyalists in the audience. Steve, it was last July I interviewed you, and you said that Kayak might be entering the hotel space for the first time. I asked you, would it be Kayak branded hotels? And you didn't rule that out. So where does that stand now?
It's something we've been working on for a while. I think when you wrote that article, your subheader was Marriott's has nothing to fear from Kayak, and that's very true. So I think the vision that we're pushing forward in the hotel space is we see an opportunity to offer a better property management solution for independent and boutique hoteliers, to let them level the playing field with you, if you will, with the big chains. So we're continuing to explore that, but we've got nothing to announce. You'll be one of the first to know, though, Dennis.
You said that last time. Okay, I see you recently launched a Things to Do tab on Kayak. It says new. What's your view of that sector? Is it potential? Is it overhyped? What are you going to do with that?
Like anything that's new, it is a bit overhyped, but there's no disputing the fact that consumers want to shop online, and a lot of this Things to Do content is now being brought online. So we think it's now at the maturation phase where we can add a Metasearch layer on top of it, because just like we talked about with non-hotel accommodations, Things to Do, those providers are usually small local operators. They publish their content to multiple platforms, and those platforms often set the price. So we think a Metasearch platform that spans all that and provides a consumer with a complete picture of what to do, and lets them pick where to buy it from and at what price is we might be at the point where that can get some traction, but we'll see.
Do you think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in that part of the industry? I see, Get Your Guide just raised some financing, and they're heavily funded. Klook is very heavily funded. What do you think?
I think it's a very expensive business to be in, which is why those companies have had to raise a lot of dough along the years, and it's still an expensive business to be in. So it's not going to be who's going to be the winner. Usually when a lot of companies have been well-funded and they're still losing a lot of money, consolidation happens. So I do expect there to be some consolidation there. And I think where you'll see it is not among the operators themselves in terms of the aggregators of the content, but between an OTA and an aggregator. If there's a clear winner that starts to emerge, because you can marry that content with an existing big consumer audience and hopefully have an attractive P&L.
Steve, we have a few audience questions. Can you tell us more about the hotel software play that you just mentioned?
I'd love to, but my PR team would hoist me on a stake if I did. So now you'll have to be patient on that. I think it's an exciting area. We've been looking at it for some time, and I hope to be able to tell you more about it soon.
So we saw, Marriott and Expedia strike a deal where Expedia polices Marriott's wholesale rates. So the question from the audience is, what is Kayak doing to help hotels police the issue of unbundling package rates and rogue operators? Rogue operators, they ain't too bad for you, right?
Well, what I'd say is, we're not in the business of policing rates for people. We're in the business of making sure consumers can see other options and get the best prices that are available to them. And we're simply not staffed to police it either. So, if there's a great rate out there, we'll surface it on Kayak, and we'll leave it to the OTAs and the hoteliers themselves to police the rates and make sure that those rates adhere to their guidelines. So, consumer comes first in our book.
So it's more the OTA problem than you guys. Let them take care of it, basically.
Well, I think ultimately the operator owns their distribution. So the airline, the hotel providing service owns their distribution, and everyone has different strategies and partners with that. Our job isn't to interfere with that at all. It's actually just to go out there and search hundreds of websites on behalf of consumer, bring all those results in one place, and let them make a decision on what to buy and where.
Search one and done.
That's a good tagline.
Is that still the tagline?
It sure is. It sure is. We haven't found anything better. At least in English, that's the tagline.
So, nobody knows where the travel industry is going exactly coming out of the pandemic. But an audience question is, where do you see Kayak 3 years from now?
I give the same answer every time people ask me to view the future, which is it'll be a much better service for consumers. It'll be a much more attractive partner for operators and OTAs. And I hope by doing both of those things well, we have a much bigger audience in P&L. But you never know. You never know. But what we can control is the strength of our services and the value we add to the industry. And on both dimensions, 3 years from now, we'll be much better than today.
One more audience question. Any view on OTA consolidation? Is there still room? Does Amazon buy someone? Does Airbnb buy someone? What do you think?
I think it's really tough for meaningful deals to get done these days in this regulatory environment, and particularly at these valuations. Everyone's P&Ls have been hammered by this pandemic, but their market valuations remain persistently high. It's amazing. So that makes it a very difficult climate to get any meaningful M&A done. So you might see some of these new companies go public via SPAC and then buy some other stuff. But I don't think it'll be the big guys doing it. I think it'll be the smaller entrants doing that. But I know you got Greg on next, who is much more intelligent about M&A activity than I am. So these are all good questions for the audience to ask him too.
Speaking of the regulatory environment, do you think Google lays low in travel given all the antitrust activity that's going on, or do they forge ahead?
I would love for them to lay low, selfishly, but look, they're a great company. I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for them, and they'll continue to innovate. My job and our job at Kayak is to stay a few steps ahead of them. We've consistently done that, and if they do anything that we think is cool, we'll be inspired by that and make it even better on Kayak.
In what way do you think you've stayed ahead of them?
We've been ahead of them in terms of the content that we've added, in terms of the feature sets that we've developed, and in terms of our trips and itinerary management, corporate travel, loyalty program will be another thing that we're ahead of them. The forays that we're making into the hotel space, these are all things that they haven't done. They haven't even done rental car search yet, Metasearch yet. So I think we're a few, more than a few steps ahead of them, but the challenge is to stay that way.
So focus still matters.
Focus and execution have always mattered, and they will continue to matter.
And what do you make of the the development that Google Vacation Rentals, so Expedia now isn't listing their properties, and Airbnb isn't in there, and I don't think Booking Holdings is in there. Maybe they are. What do you think's going on there? Is this just like a negotiating ploy? You know, I mean, it's not being monetized right now, but what do you make of that?
I think everyone's very cognizant of how Google's built a footprint on the content and hard work of other companies in the space. And they're eager to avoid a similar fate in this new category called vacation rentals. And to the extent they can emulate what Airbnb has done, which has built a very strong direct and loyal business, then that's good for them. So I think that's why everyone's being cautious with regard to Google. The temptation to participate in that channel is going to be very, very strong, particularly when the referrals are free. But I think everyone realizes that over time that referral rate will not continue to be free. So we'll see.
We have 1 minute, but from what you're saying, we could be on the cusp of a real shift in, online travel's attitude towards Google, right?
I don't think so. I mean, look, it's been a partnership that's worked for the industry, and it's worked for Google as well, and it's worked for consumers. So I think it's just big, sophisticated players figuring out how they want to interact with each other moving forward, and make sure that the value creation and the value delivered goes to the right side of the balance sheet in each company's P&Ls. Right.
So hopefully everyone will figure it out. Anyway, Steve, we're out of time. I appreciate it, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dennis. Enjoy Puerto Rico. I'm going to get back to the beach here in Miami.
Oh, man. Thanks.